She was royalty, brilliant and untouchable. A princess of the most powerful pack on the continent. Sera Stormcrest had everything except the one thing she truly wanted. Freedom to choose her own destiny. But when forbidden research leads her deep into the ancient archives at midnight, she discovers she's not alone. The scent hits her first, wild sage and old parchment, and something that makes her wolf sit up and howl. Then she sees him, illuminated by candlelight, and her world shatters. Because he's her fated mate. And he's the one wolf in the entire kingdom she absolutely cannot have. The royal library of Ironhold was Sera's sanctuary, her escape from the suffocating expectations of court life. While her brother Draken dealt with pack politics and territorial disputes, while the newly mated Mira adjusted to her role as future queen, Sera found her purpose buried in ancient texts and forgotten histories. She was the scholar princess, the one who understood that true power came not just from strength but from knowledge carefully acquired and wisely applied. The library itself was a masterpiece, 3 stories of carved stone galleries circling a central atrium, with towering shelves holding thousands of volumes collected over centuries. During daylight hours, it was moderately busy with scribes and court scholars. But at night, it belonged entirely to Sera. She'd obtained the keys to the restricted archives years ago, a gift from her father before his death, with strict instructions. Knowledge is dangerous, little Storm, he told her, his amber eyes serious. Especially our family's knowledge. Guard it well. She had guarded it faithfully, spending countless nights studying their bloodline's darkest secrets. That knowledge had helped save Draken's life when she'd identified Casimir's poisoning method. Now, 3 months after that terrible night, she was researching something new, something that had been nagging at her consciousness. The winter solstice was approaching again, and with it came the traditional mate gathering, where unmated wolves from allied packs would converge on Ironhold, hoping to find their fated partners. Sera had attended 5 of these gatherings since reaching maturity. 5 years of being paraded before suitable alphas and high-ranking betas. 5 years of feeling absolutely nothing, no spark, no recognition, no bond. She was 28 now, and whispers were beginning to circulate. Perhaps the princess was defective. Perhaps royal blood had become too refined, too isolated. Perhaps she would never find her mate. Sera told herself she didn't care about the whispers or the political pressure. She had her research, her books, her purpose. She didn't need a mate to feel complete. But her wolf disagreed. Her wolf paced restlessly, waiting, searching, growing more agitated with each passing season. Tonight, Sera was deep in the restricted section, surrounded by texts about ancient mating bonds and bloodline curses. She'd found references to something called a cross-rank bond, a mating between wolves of vastly different social stations. The text suggested such bonds were rare but incredibly powerful, often suppressed by families for political reasons. She was so absorbed in a particularly dense manuscript that she almost missed it. A sound, the soft scrape of leather against stone, the quiet rustle of pages turning. Someone else was in the archives. Sera's head snapped up, her wolf immediately alert. The restricted archives required specific authorization. Only she, Draken, and a handful of trusted scholars had access. And she knew for a fact that Draken was currently in council meetings that would run past midnight. She rose silently from her desk, moving with the predatory grace of her bloodline. She followed the sound through the narrow aisles of the oldest section, where texts dating back 500 years were carefully preserved. The candlelight flickering ahead gave away his position. She approached cautiously, preparing to confront whoever had breached her sanctuary. And then the scent hit her. It struck like lightning, like a physical force that stole her breath and made her wolf surge forward with overwhelming intensity. Wild sage, the kind that grew in the high mountain meadows. Old parchment and ink. Wood smoke and pine. And underneath it all, something uniquely him, something that sang to every cell in her body. Mate. The word exploded through her consciousness. Mate, mate, mate. She stumbled slightly, catching herself against a shelf. The sound gave her away. The figure ahead turned, and she saw him clearly for the first time. He was tall, though not quite as massive as Draken. Lean and athletic rather than bulky. He had dark brown hair that fell to his shoulders, slightly disheveled as though he'd been running his hands through it while reading. His eyes were a striking green, unusual for their kind, reflecting the candlelight. He wore simple dark clothing, the practical garb of a working scholar, not court finery. And his face, his beautiful intelligent face, showed the same shock she was feeling. He'd scented her too. His eyes had gone wide, his pupils dilating. His nostrils flared as he drew in her scent more deeply. Mountain storms and old leather, vanilla and something spicy, unmistakably royal, unmistakably her. For a suspended moment, they simply stared at each other across the narrow aisle, the weight of recognition hanging between them like a physical presence. Then reality crashed back in. "You shouldn't be here," Sera said, and her voice came out breathless, shaky, not at all the authoritative tone she'd intended. The man blinked, seeming to shake off the effects of the bond, though she could see his hands trembling slightly where they gripped the book he'd been reading. "Princess Sera," he said, and his voice was deep, cultured, educated. He bowed formally, the gesture automatic. "I apologize for the intrusion. I have authorization from the head archivist to access these materials for my research. I didn't expect anyone else to be here at this hour." The head archivist, Sera thought, her mind racing. That would be Master Torin, her brother's appointment after the previous archivist retired. And Master Torin would only grant access to someone with legitimate scholarly credentials and a compelling reason. "Who are you?" she demanded, moving closer despite every instinct screaming at her to either run away or close the remaining distance and touch him. "What are you researching in restricted materials?" The man hesitated, conflict clear on his face. Then he seemed to make a decision. "My name is Kieran Ashwood. I'm a historian and researcher, currently compiling a comprehensive analysis of bloodline genetics and mating bond patterns across the wolf territories. Master Torin granted me access because much of the primary source material exists only here in Ironhold's archives." Ashwood. The name was familiar, tickling at Sera's memory. Not a major pact name, not one of the powerful families. "Where are you from?" she asked, her scholar's mind engaging despite the chaos of her emotions. "I'm from the Silver Falls pack originally," Kieran said, watching her carefully. "Though I've spent the last 5 years traveling between territories, conducting research and teaching at various pack academies. I'm considered packless by most definitions, bound to scholarship rather than land." Silver Falls was a small, remote pack in the northern mountains, respectable but insignificant in the political hierarchy. And packless meant he had no formal standing, no rank beyond what his education provided. He was, in the brutal hierarchy of their world, nobody. And he was her mate. The realization was devastating and exhilarating in equal measure. Sera's wolf was singing with joy, recognizing its other half, desperate to complete the bond. But her human mind understood the impossible situation immediately. She was Princess Sera Stormcrest, sister to the Alpha King, second in line to the throne until Draken and Mira produced heirs. Her mate would become a prince consort, would need to navigate court politics, would need to be strong enough to stand beside her. The position required an alpha, someone powerful, someone politically connected. Not a wandering scholar with no pack and no rank. "You're researching mating bonds," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Have you found anything interesting?" She needed to know if he understood what had just happened between them, if he felt the pull as intensely as she did. Kieran's green eyes locked on hers, and she saw the answer there before he spoke. "I've found that the bond recognizes compatibility of spirit, not social rank," he said quietly. "I've documented 17 cases of cross-rank matings in the historical record. Most were suppressed or forbidden by families. Only 3 resulted in completed bonds. The others ended in tragedy, rejection, or exile." He was telling her he understood perfectly. He understood what they were to each other, and he understood it was impossible. Sera felt something crack inside her chest. She'd waited 28 years for this moment, and now that it had arrived, it came with an expiration date stamped clearly on it. She couldn't have him. The court would never accept it. Draken was still consolidating his power after Casimir's betrayal. He'd just taken an Omega as his mate, which was already controversial. If Sera, the princess, bonded with a packless scholar of no rank, it would be seen as further weakness, further chaos. The council would revolt. Allied packs would question their family's judgment. Everything Draken had worked for could be undermined. "I should go," Kieran said, though he made no move to leave. His knuckles were white where he gripped the book. This was a mistake. I'll request different research hours to avoid any further awkward encounters. No, Sera said quickly, too quickly. Her wolf snarled at the thought of him leaving, of losing him when she just found him. You have authorization to be here. You're conducting legitimate research. I won't interfere with that. She took a steadying breath. In fact, perhaps I can assist. I'm quite familiar with these archives. What specifically are you researching tonight? She saw the conflict on his face, the same war between duty and desire that was raging inside her. Then he seemed to reach a decision. I'm trying to locate information about bond suppression, he said, his voice carefully academic. The historical methods families use to prevent or break unwanted mate bonds. It seems relevant to my current situation. The words hit her like a physical blow. He was already researching how to break their bond, how to walk away before it fully formed. The practical, logical part of her mind acknowledged this was wise. The rest of her wanted to scream. Show me what you found, she said instead, moving to stand beside him. If they were going to do this, if they were going to be responsible and break something precious before it could fully form, then she would face it head-on. She would help him research their own destruction, because that's what duty demanded. Kieran hesitated, then spread the book open on the reading desk. The candlelight illuminated an ancient text, the script barely legible. This describes a ritual, he said, pointing to a passage. It requires both parties to formally reject the bond before it's consummated. There's a specific incantation, offerings to the moon, a symbolic severing. It's supposed to be intensely painful but effective. How painful? Sera asked, leaning in to read. She was close enough now that his scent surrounded her completely, and her wolf was practically clawing to get out. The text describes it as feeling like your soul is being torn in half, Kieran said. His voice had gone rough. Several accounts mention that wolves who undergo the ritual are never quite the same afterward. They can function, take other partners eventually, but something essential is damaged permanently. They stood in silence, both staring at the ancient words that described their future. The future where they did the responsible thing, the dutiful thing, and destroyed something rare and precious to maintain political stability. I don't want this, Kieran said suddenly, roughly. His hand slammed down on the desk, making the candle flame jump. I've spent 5 years traveling, researching, telling myself that I didn't need a mate. That scholarship was enough. And then I sent you, I see you, and it's like everything I've been missing suddenly makes sense. And the universe's idea of a cosmic joke is making you completely, utterly unattainable. I'm nobody, princess. I have no pack, no rank, no political value. I'm just a scholar who reads dead languages and argues about historical footnotes. I can't give you what you deserve. And what do I deserve? Sera asked, her own frustration finally breaking through. Another political alliance? Some alpha I feel nothing for, chosen because his pack controls trade routes or border territories. I've spent 5 years being paraded at mate gatherings like a prize horse. I've endured every qualified alpha on the continent trying to impress me, and I felt nothing. Not a spark, not a whisper. I was starting to think I was broken. She turned to face him fully, her amber eyes blazing. And then I sent you, and my wolf recognizes you. And you're researching how to break our bond before we've even spoken more than a dozen words to each other. I'm trying to protect you, Kieran said, his green eyes intense. If we pursue this, if we let the bond form fully, you'll be forced to choose between me and your family, your position, everything you are. I won't do that to you. I won't be the reason you're exiled or rejected by your pack. Maybe I want to make that choice myself, Sera shot back. Maybe I'm tired of everyone else deciding what's best for me, what I should want, who I should be. Her voice dropped. You don't even know me. How do you know what I deserve or what I want? You're right, Kieran said, something shifting in his expression. I don't know you, but I want to. The words hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. This was the precipice. They could step back now, follow the ritual, break the forming bond before it became unbreakable. Or they could step forward into complete unknown, consequences be damned. Sera had spent her entire life being responsible, being the dutiful princess, the scholar, the one who supported her brother and put the pack's needs above her own wants. She'd helped save Draken's life by identifying poison. She'd welcomed Mira when the court whispered against an Omega Queen. She'd done everything right, everything expected. Maybe it was time to do something completely, utterly wrong. Tell me about your research, Sera said, pulling over a second chair. Not the bond-breaking ritual. Your actual work. What have you discovered about mating patterns? Kieran blinked, surprised by the shift. Are you sure? We will discuss it, Sera interrupted. Eventually. But right now, I want to know who you are beyond the mate bond. Because if we're going to make an informed decision about our future, I should probably know something about you beyond the fact that you smell like my favorite mountain meadow. A slow smile spread across Kieran's face, transforming it from handsome to absolutely devastating. That's remarkably logical for someone whose wolf is probably screaming at her to complete the bond immediately. My wolf is screaming several things, Sera admitted, feeling her cheeks heat slightly. But I've spent 28 years learning to think with my brain instead of my instincts. So, your research. Tell me. Kieran settled into his chair, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. All right. But fair warning, I can talk about this subject for hours. Most people find it incredibly boring. I'm a royal scholar who spends her nights translating dead languages and studying bloodline curses, Sera said dryly. I think I can keep up. And so he talked and she listened and the candles burned lower. Kieran described his research with obvious passion, explaining patterns he'd found in historical mate bonds. He discovered that forced political matings had a 73% failure rate over time, resulting in broken bonds, infidelity, or both partners becoming essentially strangers. True fated mate bonds, regardless of rank differences, showed a 96% success rate and produced stronger offspring. The data suggests that the mate bond recognizes genetic and spiritual compatibility that we don't fully understand, Kieran explained, gesturing animatedly. The wolf knows something our conscious minds don't. When you suppress or break these bonds for political reasons, you're essentially arguing that you know better than thousands of years of evolution. But society requires structure, Sera argued, playing devil's advocate even though she agreed with him. If everyone just followed their mate bonds regardless of rank or political implications, you'd have chaos. Complete dissolution of the careful alliances that keep peace between packs. Kieran leaned forward, his green eyes intense. Would you though? Or would you have stronger bonds based on actual compatibility? I've found evidence that territories with more flexible mating policies actually show greater long-term stability. When wolves are forced into political matings, they're miserable. Miserable wolves make poor leaders and unstable packs. When wolves are allowed to follow their true bonds, they're stronger, more focused, more loyal. You're describing a complete revolution in how our society functions, Sera said. That's not something that changes easily. Revolutions have to start somewhere, Kieran said quietly. Maybe they start with a princess brave enough to question whether the old ways are actually working. Sera studied him in the candlelight. He was brilliant, passionate about his work, and he challenged her intellectually in a way no one had in years. And beyond that, just being near him felt right in a way she couldn't articulate. Her wolf had settled into contented alertness, no longer frantic, simply satisfied to be in his presence. She knew with absolute certainty that she could spend every night for the rest of her life talking with him like this and never grow bored. That was more terrifying than any political consequence. It's nearly dawn, Kieran said finally, glancing at the high windows where faint gray light was beginning to show. You should probably return to your quarters before people start asking questions. Sera realized with shock that they'd been talking for hours. It had felt like minutes. You're right, she said, standing reluctantly. But Kieran, we need to discuss what we're going to do about this. She gestured between them. I know, he said, also rising. His hand reached out, almost touching her arm, then dropped. We should probably avoid each other. Make this easier. Is that what you want? Sera asked, her amber eyes locked on his green ones. No, he admitted. What I want is impossible. Maybe impossible is just another word for difficult, Sera said. She made a decision. I'm here most nights. Usually around midnight. If you happen to be conducting research at the same time, well, the archives are large enough for 2 scholars. Kieran's expression was torn between hope and concern. Princess, I don't think Sera, she corrected. When we're here in the archives, I'm just Sera. Not a princess, not a political piece. Just another scholar researching obscure historical texts. Can you do that? Kieran searched her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Just Sera. And just Kieran. No ranks, no expectations. Just 2 people trying to understand what fate has handed them. Exactly, Sera said. She turned to leave, then paused. Kieran, thank you for being honest about the bond-breaking ritual. A lesser man would have hidden it, tried to manipulate the situation. I appreciate your integrity. A lesser man wouldn't be worthy of you, Kieran said quietly. Rank and politics aside, that's just truth. Sera left the archives with her heart pounding and her mind racing. She'd just agreed to essentially court her fated mate in secret, with no clear plan for how this could possibly end well. It was reckless, impulsive, completely unlike her usual careful approach to life. It was also the most alive she'd felt in years. Over the following weeks, a pattern established itself. Sera would attend to her court duties during the day, supporting Draken, helping Mira navigate the complexities of her new position, managing the charitable works expected of a princess. She smiled, nodded, endured yet another conversation about suitable matches at the upcoming mate gathering. And then when the castle slept, she would slip into the archives and find Kieran already there, surrounded by books and parchments, a slight smile appearing on his face when he scented her arrival. They talked about everything. History and politics, pack dynamics and social structures, literature and philosophy. They debated and argued and laughed. Kieran challenged her assumptions and she challenged his theories. He taught her obscure historical facts, and she shared insights from restricted royal texts he'd never been able to access. Sometimes they worked in comfortable silence, each absorbed in their own research, simply content to share space. And slowly, inevitably, they learned each other. Sera discovered that Kieran had left his birth pack at 18 to pursue education, something highly unusual for a wolf of his station. His family had been poor but valued learning. His mother had saved for years to send him to a pack academy. He'd excelled, earned scholarships, and eventually became one of the most respected historians in their world, even without rank or political connections. I wanted to prove that worth wasn't determined by birth, Kieran told her one night. That a wolf from a nothing pack could contribute something meaningful. Maybe I was naive. Your research is literally changing how we understand mate bonds and pack dynamics, Sera said. You've documented patterns that could influence policy across territories. That's not naive. That's revolutionary. And probably why most people ignore it, Kieran said with a wry smile. Revolution makes people uncomfortable. Kieran discovered that Sera had always been the shadow princess, overshadowed by her powerful brother, but content with that role because it gave her freedom to pursue her own interests. She'd learned 5 languages, mastered 3 forms of combat, and could recite the lineages of every major pack on the continent. I never wanted to rule, Sera admitted. Draken was always meant for that. But I wanted to be useful, to contribute in my own way. Knowledge is power, but it's a quieter power. The kind people underestimate. Your brother doesn't underestimate you, Kieran observed. I've seen how often he seeks your counsel. You helped save his life. That was luck, Sera said. I happened to recognize an obscure poison. No, Kieran said firmly. That was years of dedicated study and preparation meeting opportunity. You made your own luck. The bond between them deepened with each passing night, and the pull became increasingly difficult to resist. They were careful never to touch, knowing that physical contact would intensify the mate bond beyond what they could control. But the restraint was agonizing. One night, Sera arrived at the archives to find Kieran pacing, agitated. What's wrong? She asked immediately, her wolf rising in protective response to his distress. I received word from Master Torin today, Kieran said, running his hand through his hair. My authorized research period ends in 2 weeks. After that, I'll need to leave Ironhold, move on to the next territory for my work. 2 weeks. The words hit like a physical blow. They'd been meeting for almost 3 months, dancing around the bond, pretending they could maintain this careful equilibrium forever. 2 weeks forced a decision. We knew this couldn't last, Sera said, but her voice shook. We both knew one of us would have to make a choice eventually. I've been offered a position, Kieran said, still pacing. A permanent teaching role at the Northern Academy. It's prestigious, well-paid, everything I've worked toward. I should accept. I should leave here, let you find an appropriate mate at the gathering, and build the life I planned before I ever scented you. But you don't want to, Sera said. It wasn't a question. I don't want to, Kieran confirmed, finally stopping to face her. I want to stay here in this library talking to you every night for the rest of my life. I want to complete this bond and damn the consequences. I want to be selfish for once instead of logical. He laughed bitterly. But we both know that's not how this works. I won't ruin your life because the universe decided to play a cruel joke. What if it's not a joke? Sera asked quietly. What if this is exactly what's supposed to happen? Kieran, I've spent 3 months getting to know you. You're brilliant, kind, passionate about your work. And you challenge me in ways no one else does. You make me want to be brave instead of just being dutiful. That's worth fighting for. You're a princess, Kieran said, his voice pained. I'm nobody. Your court will never accept me. Your brother, I'll handle my brother, Sera interrupted. Draken, of all wolves, understands what it means to find an unexpected mate. He chose Mira despite the political complications. He'll understand. Mira saved his life, Kieran pointed out. That gave her value beyond her rank. What do I bring besides political complications and scandal? You bring yourself, Sera said fiercely. Your mind, your integrity, your research that could actually change our world for the better. And you bring the fact that you're my mate, which should matter more than any political calculation. She took a step closer, breaking their careful distance. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of letting other people's expectations dictate my life. If I'm going to be miserable, I'd rather be miserable because I fought for what I wanted and failed, than because I never tried at all. You're serious, Kieran said, searching her face. You'd actually be willing to fight your entire court, risk your position for this? For us? For me, Sera corrected. Yes, I would. But I need to know you'd fight too. I need to know this isn't just me being impulsive while you're planning your exit strategy. Kieran closed the remaining distance between them in 2 strides. His hand came up, hovering just beside her face, not quite touching. I have been in love with you since the first night, he said roughly. Every logical thought in my brain says this is disaster. But my wolf knows you're mine, and I'm done pretending I can walk away. If you're willing to fight, then I'll fight beside you. Whatever comes. Then you should probably kiss me, Sera said, her heart hammering. Because once we touch, once we let the bond solidify, there's no going back. No more escape plans or bond-breaking rituals. We're committed. Are you sure? Kieran asked, his hand still hovering. Once we do this, I'm yours. Completely. No matter what happens. I've been sure since the moment I scented you, Sera said. I was just too afraid to admit it. His hand finally made contact, cupping her face with infinite gentleness. The moment their skin touched, the bond that had been forming, building, waiting, snapped into place with overwhelming force. It was like lightning and coming home at the same time. Sera gasped as sensation flooded through her, feeling him in a way that went beyond physical, beyond scent. She could feel his emotions, his fierce protectiveness, his love, his determination. Then he kissed her, and the rest of the world ceased to exist. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the bond was solid and unbreakable between them. Sera could feel it like a golden thread connecting her heart to his, permanent and perfect. No going back now, Kieran said, his forehead resting against hers. No going back, Sera agreed. Tomorrow we tell Draken. Tonight we just exist like this. They stayed in the archives until dawn, wrapped in each other, the bond humming with contentment between them. Sera knew the fight ahead would be brutal. The court would object. Political complications would multiply. But for the first time in her life she felt complete. The next evening, Sera requested a private audience with Draken. She found him in his study with Mira, the two of them reviewing correspondence. They'd grown close over the past months, and Mira's calming influence had been good for Draken's tendency toward brooding intensity. "Brother, I need to speak with you about something important," Sera said. Her voice steady despite her nerves. Draken looked up, immediately reading her tension. He dismissed the guards. "Whatever it is, you can say it in front of Mira. We have no secrets." "Good," Sera said. "Because I need you both to understand. I found my mate." Draken's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "That's wonderful news, Sera. Finally. Which alpha from the allied packs is it? Marcus from Storm Peak? Vincent from—" "He's not an alpha," Sera interrupted. "He's not from an allied pack. He's a scholar, a historian named Kieran Ashwood. He's technically packless, no rank, no political connections. And he's my fated mate, and I'm claiming him regardless of what the court says." The silence that followed was deafening. Draken's expression shifted from pleasure to confusion to carefully controlled concern. Sera, he said slowly. Are you certain? The bond, yes, absolutely certain, Sera said. I've spent 3 months getting to know him. He's brilliant, honorable, and he's mine. I'm not asking for permission, Draken. I'm informing you of my decision. You're asking me to accept that my sister, second in line to the throne, wants to bond with a packless scholar, Draken said, his alpha authority creeping into his voice. Do you understand the political implications? Every allied pack will see this as weakness. They already question our judgment after I chose Mira. This will show that we value true bonds over political convenience, Sera finished. Yes, I understand the implications. I also understand that you, of all wolves, chose your fated mate despite massive political pressure. You claimed Mira when the entire court called for her execution. You fought for your bond. I'm asking you to support mine. That was different, Draken started. How? Sera challenged. Because she saved your life? Because her gift proved valuable? Kieran's research could transform how we understand mate bonds across all territories. His work has documented that forced political matings fail 73% of the time. Maybe it's time we stop sacrificing our people's happiness for alliances that don't actually create stability. Draken stood, beginning to pace. It's not that simple, Sera. The court is barely stable after Casimir's betrayal. We need to project strength. Actually, Mira said quietly, speaking for the first time. Her voice was soft but firm. Maybe Sera's right. Draken turned to look at his mate, surprised. You think I should approve this? I think you should remember what it felt like when everyone told you that bonding with me was a mistake, Mira said. She rose, moving to stand beside him. I was nothing, Draken. An omega from a minor pack with no value except my nose. You fought for me anyway because the bond was real. Sera's bond is just as real. Yes, it will be politically complicated. But hasn't our bond proven that sometimes the unexpected choice is the right one? Draken looked between his mate and his sister, conflict clear on his face. I need to meet him, he said finally. This Kieran Ashwood. If he's going to be part of this family, I need to judge his character myself. Sera felt relief flood through her. It wasn't approval, not yet, but it wasn't rejection either. Of course. I'll arrange it. But Draken, don't try to intimidate him with the full Alpha King routine. He's a scholar, not a warrior. If he's going to be your mate, he needs to be strong enough to withstand court politics and pressure, Draken said firmly. I won't coddle him. I wouldn't want you to, Sera said. Just give him a fair chance. The meeting was arranged for the following evening, in Draken's private study rather than the formal throne room. Sera appreciated the gesture. Her brother could be intimidating enough without the added weight of royal ceremony. She arrived early with Kieran, who was dressed in his finest clothing, though it was still simple compared to court standards. He's going to test you, Sera warned him. Push you, see how you react under pressure. It's what he does. I expected nothing less, Kieran said, though she could feel his nervousness through the bond. I'm about to meet the Alpha King and tell him I'm claiming his sister. If he didn't want to rip my throat out, I'd be concerned about his protective instincts. Draken and Mira were waiting when they entered. Draken stood behind his desk, every inch the powerful king. Mira sat to the side, her expression carefully neutral. Kieran bowed formally. Alpha King Luna Mira. Thank you for seeing me. Kieran Ashwood, Draken said, not inviting him to sit. My sister tells me you're a historian and scholar. Tell me about your research. For the next hour, Draken grilled Kieran with questions. Not just about his research but about his background, his intentions, his understanding of what it would mean to bond with a princess. Kieran answered every question with calm intelligence, never backing down but never showing disrespect. Your research suggests forced political matings are unstable, Draken said. Yet our entire system is built on such alliances. Are you suggesting we should dismantle centuries of tradition? I'm suggesting we should examine whether those traditions actually serve their intended purpose, Kieran said. Your own bond with Luna Mira proves that true fated mates create stronger partnerships than political arrangements. I've documented this pattern across 17 territories over 500 years. The data is clear. Data and politics are different things, Draken countered. My council barely accepted Mira and she saved my life. What will you bring to this family besides complications? Knowledge, Kieran said firmly. Loyalty to Sera above all else. And a willingness to adapt to your world, while maintaining my own integrity. I won't pretend to be an alpha or a warrior. I'm a scholar. But I'll protect your sister with everything I am. And I'll support her in ways that honor both who she is, and who she wants to become. Draken studied him for a long moment. Then he looked at Sera. You're certain about this? You understand the fight ahead? I'm certain, Sera said. And I'm ready to fight. Draken sighed, and some of the intimidating Alpha King persona melted away, leaving just an older brother who wanted his sister to be happy. Then I won't stand in your way. But Kieran, understand this. If you hurt her, there's nowhere in this world you can hide from me. I wouldn't expect anything less, Kieran said. And for what it's worth, hurting her would destroy me anyway. The bond ensures that. Mira spoke up for the first time. I think they're good for each other. I've watched Sera these past weeks. She's been happier, more vibrant. That's worth something. Draken looked at his mate, and something unspoken passed between them. You're right, he said finally. He came around the desk, offering his hand to Kieran. Welcome to the family. But we need to manage how this is announced. The mate gathering is in 2 weeks. We'll present you then as Sera's chosen mate. It gives us time to prepare the council. The mate gathering was traditionally a celebration, but this year it felt more like walking into battle. Sera stood beside Kieran in her formal court attire, a deep burgundy dress with silver embroidery, her black hair styled elaborately. Kieran wore clothing Draken had provided, fine enough for court but not so ornate it looked like he was pretending to be something he wasn't. The gathered crowd included representatives from every major pack, all the allied families, and countless unmated wolves hoping to find their destinies. When Draken stood to make his announcement, the hall fell silent. My sister, Princess Sera Stormcrest, has found her fated mate, Draken announced, his voice carrying. She has chosen to bond with Kieran Ashwood, historian and scholar. A murmur ran through the crowd, confusion and shock rippling outward. Chosen? Someone called out. Not an alpha from the allied packs? The bond recognizes compatibility of spirit, not rank, Draken said firmly. As my own mating proves. Sera and Kieran's bond is sanctioned by this throne. Any who question it question my judgment. The statement was clear. Support Sera's choice or challenge the king directly. Most of the crowd subsided into reluctant acceptance, though Sera could see disapproval on many faces. But one voice rang out sharp with disdain. This is weakness. Alpha Thaddeus of Iron Ridge snarled, standing. First an Omega Queen, now a packless scholar as Prince Consort. The Stormcrest line has lost its strength. Kieran stepped forward before Sera could respond. His voice was calm but carried surprising authority. Strength isn't only measured in physical dominance or political power, Alpha Thaddeus. It's measured in integrity, in wisdom, in the courage to follow truth even when it's difficult. Princess Sera possesses all of those qualities. I'm honored she chose me. Pretty words from a bookish wolf, Thaddeus sneered. What happens when real challenges arise? When enemies threaten? Will you defend our princess with footnotes and citations? If needed, yes, Kieran said. But I'll also defend her with strategy, with knowledge of our enemies' histories and weaknesses, with understanding of political dynamics you might miss while flexing your muscles. Not every threat comes with claws extended. Some come with smiles and poisoned wine, as this court recently learned. The reference to Casimir's betrayal was pointed, and it landed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through wolves who remembered how close they'd come to losing their king. Thaddeus sat down, still glowering but silenced. Draken nodded approval at Kieran's handling of the challenge. The remainder of the gathering proceeded with careful politeness. Some wolves approached Sera with genuine congratulations. Others maintained cold distance, making their disapproval clear without being openly disrespectful. But through it all, Sera felt Kieran's presence through the bond, steady and supportive. She wasn't alone. When the formal ceremonies finally concluded, Sera and Kieran retreated to the archives, their sanctuary. They collapsed into their usual chairs, exhausted. That was Sera started. Terrible, Kieran finished. Awkward, politically fraught, and uncomfortable for everyone involved. Yes, Sera agreed. Then she started laughing. Kieran looked at her in confusion, then began laughing too. We did it, Sera said. We actually did it. Against all logic and wisdom, we fought for this bond and won. Well, won is a strong word, Kieran said. We haven't been exiled or killed, Sera corrected. In our world, that counts as winning. He pulled her close, the bond humming with contentment between them. Was it worth it? All the political complications, the disapproval, the fight? Absolutely, Sera said without hesitation. You're worth it. They sat together in comfortable silence, surrounded by ancient books and centuries of accumulated knowledge. Outside, the court would continue to whisper and scheme. Political complications would multiply. There would be more challenges ahead. More wolves like Thaddeus who questioned their bond. But here, in the quiet sanctuary of the archives, none of that mattered. Here they were, just Sera and Kieran, fated mates, scholars in love, two wolves who had chosen each other against impossible odds. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do, Sera said softly, is choose happiness over duty. Sometimes they're the same thing, Kieran replied, kissing her temple. Loving you feels like the most important purpose I've ever had. Over the following months, Kieran proved himself repeatedly to the skeptical court. His research provided valuable insights into neighboring territories. His knowledge of pack histories helped resolve 3 border disputes peacefully. His gentle manner made him surprisingly effective in diplomatic situations where Draken's intensity might escalate tensions. Slowly, grudgingly, the court began to accept him, not as a traditional prince consort but as something new, something valuable in his own right. And Sera flourished beside him, no longer the shadow princess but a force in her own right, speaking with authority about pack policy and social reform. One evening, almost a year after they'd first met, Draken found them in the archives. I need your help, he said without preamble. The Eastern Territories are threatening war over a succession dispute. I need historical precedent, similar situations and how they were resolved. Kieran immediately began pulling books, his mind already sorting through centuries of relevant conflicts. What are the specific circumstances? Draken explained the situation while Kieran and Sera worked together, finding cases, cross-referencing outcomes, building a comprehensive analysis. By dawn, they'd assembled a complete historical brief with 3 possible resolution strategies, all supported by documented precedent. Draken reviewed their work, impressed. This is excellent. This could actually prevent a war. That's what we do, Sera said simply. You protect the kingdom with strength. We protect it with knowledge. Draken looked between his sister and her mate, and finally smiled. I was wrong to doubt this bond. You two are exactly what this kingdom needs. Thank you, brother, Sera said. That means everything. After Draken left, Kieran pulled Sera close. A year ago I was researching how to break our bond, he said. Now I can't imagine existing without you. A year ago I thought I was broken because I couldn't feel the bonds I was supposed to want, Sera said. Now I understand I was just waiting for the right one. They kissed, the bond singing between them perfect and permanent. In the end, Sera's story wasn't about a princess who defied convention. It was about a woman who had the courage to choose authenticity over expectation, love over politics, and partnership over power. She'd found her mate in the forbidden archives, and together they'd rewritten the rules. And sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet revolutionaries who fought with knowledge and integrity changed the world more profoundly than any warrior with a blade. If you loved this story of forbidden love, intellectual equals, and finding your fated mate against all odds, show your support right now. Hit that like button because it truly helps this channel grow and reach others who love these stories. Share this video with a friend who appreciates romance with intelligence and depth. And most importantly, subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we have so many more tales of unexpected destiny to share. What do you think happened next for Sera and Kieran? What challenges did they face as they reformed pack politics? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and your ideas inspire future stories.